Okay. Hold on one second. All right, so now we can go, Russ. I wanted to make sure my YouTube channel was able to chime in right now and to be able to experience this goodness. So I'm going to start out for all my people. I know you've been here.
All right,
I'm gonna,
so now we can go, Russ.
hold on.
I wanted to make sure my YouTube channel was able to.
There we go. Let's mute that.
Well, that way, if I didn't hear the question the first time, I could hear it again. That was perfect.
I do need to run it on my phone for sure. But I want to just give you a great introduction first, and before we dive in, because I want everybody to know how awesome you are.
Well, thank you. I'll get my wife in here too. Hold
on. Bring wife in.
Bring wife she knows.
So staffingpreneurs, I really appreciate you all coming to your weekly Q&A class. This class does belong to you. If this is your first time here, I'm Coach D. Williams. I help professionals like you set up, launch, run, and scale your niche recruitment and staffing business to 7 figures, 7, 8 figures. That's the goal, right? And this is our weekly setup class. Everyone that's in this class right now that are on my Zoom call are paying members. They have invested in themselves to come in and to really take their niche recruitment and staffing business to the next level. We've opened this up to YouTube only to watch because we have a special guest today. And not every week we have a special guest, but some weeks we do. And this week we have a really cool special guest. So if you're watching and streaming it from YouTube, I really appreciate you. Put your name, your niche, and where you're located in the inbox, and we will definitely address you shortly. And right now, in this moment, I want to take some time to introduce someone that's really special. I feel like Russ Rymer. Russ is our official partner here at Staffingpreneurs Academy when it comes to obtaining your insurance. Does that mean you can't go elsewhere? You can go anywhere you want, but who we partner with directly is with Russ, and I'll let him go into his business model and different things like that. But I want you to know that he's here. He's been a partner with us for a very long time. I would say maybe 4 years or more. And he's helped ensure a lot of staffingpreneurs. So I want you all to put your questions in the box, or be prepared to ask questions. But I'm hoping Russ going to start out and just giving us the jig, and making sure that we know exactly what it is that we need in order to be insured properly in running our niche recruitment and staffing business. And then he can talk about anything else he wants to. So Russ, thank you so much for being here. And I'm opening up the floor.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Well, last time I found that the last part of our conversation was probably the most informative, where I could just answer questions real time. But in short, we specialize in temp staffing service. I've been in the business for 20 years. I insure almost exclusively temp staffing firms. I've been working with big firms to new ventures to all kinds of sizes, all kinds of industries. So I live to serve, and I really want this to be more informative first than a sales pitch to anybody. You can get insurance from whomever you want to. I think the most important part is knowing what to ask for. You go up to, that's why all these fast food places, they've got numbers now. So you get exactly what that number provides. Well, with this, you got to order from me and tell me exactly what you're looking for. Everybody's different. You may have a contract coming up. I just dealt with one of your staffingpreneurs that had a contract coming up that they're requiring different limits and a couple of different lines of coverage, like cyber liability and that kind of thing. So make sure you have all of that together. First and foremost, before you deal with any insurance professional, put a list together of what you're looking for, and then also try to get involved sooner rather than later. A lot of the quotes that we get are good for 30 days. So you want to make sure and get as soon as possible those numbers so you can do your business planning. But also, if you're requiring different lines of business, that may require a little bit more underwriting time from us. So sometimes it can take 30, 45 days. This isn't Geico. I was explaining to one of the other staffingpreneurs actually this week or earlier last week, and I was saying, unfortunately, we have to go through underwriting. These are underwritten programs. Anytime you get into commercial insurance, we fill out applications as your agent. we send them to underwriting, different underwriting facilities based on what you're looking for that might fit or approve that application. So it's not just one, and it's not like something I can do online. Be very wary of somebody that can do it online and give it to you in 15 minutes, because they may give you the piece of paper, which is great. I hope you get the business with that, but you're paying good money for coverage. God forbid there ever is a claim. You want them to be able to defend you in that claim. You want them to be able to pay out if there is liability at the end of any lawsuit or at the end of any claim that's potential to your business as far as responsibility. So those are my nuggets of the week. I do have a couple of other things that I did want to touch on, just getting started. So a lot of the questions that come up are state driven. So we want to talk about which states are combinable. And this comes from the work comp side, because you're starting out in a assigned risk environment, typically for any new venture temp staffing firm. The general liability is going to be for all states. It covers your business, and that's any lawsuit that could arise to your business. Work comp is statutory to different states. There are some states that don't play well with others and others that do. So I went ahead and compiled a list of the states that are combinable. These states we can put on multiple policies together. If they are not on this list, you cannot. They will be a standalone policies. You could potentially end up having several different policies if they aren't on this list. So it's going to sound like the state song. I hate going through this because I caught myself reading it this morning. But so you got Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Connecticut, DC. So the District of Columbia is separate, but it is combinable with other states. Georgia, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Oregon, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Virginia, Vermont, and West Virginia. Those states, and I'll send this to you in an email, D. These will combine with each other. Okay, these won't combine with any other states that I haven't listed, but those are all what we call NCCI states. NCCI is the National Council of Compensation Insurance, and they pretty much oversee a 90% portion of the United States workman's comp. They actually provide your experience modification once you're in business for a long time and you've got losses or lack thereof. They will provide a modifier for your company that is used to generate the actual work comp rates. It'll be a plus or a minus, a discount or a debit actually on your work comp rates. But so if any of those states that I just listed off, you want to say work in Arkansas and North Carolina, those states are combinable. But if you wanted to work in Arkansas and let's say New Jersey that I didn't list, you would have to have two separate policies. So I just wanted to hit on that real quick. That's the major question that we end up having to go through. So a couple of the questions that I ask are what type of temporary staffing are you doing? That will determine which sort of liability program that we go to. And then the second question will be what states are you looking to operate in? So a lot of staffingpreneurs will give me a long laundry list of states after we have a general discussion. I don't want to limit that, but I also want to make their life a little bit easier, because the one thing about work comp is it's based off the end of the year payroll. So end of the year payroll for what state and in what class code. Each job has its own class code. So you're going to have multiple exposures, multiple different payrolls, and then you'll have an audit at the end of the year that'll determine the premium. What I quote to you will be the rate. The rate will be a per 100, or you can do it as a percentage of your total payroll in that class code or in that job description. So you don't want to have multiple audits, and you will if you have multiple different policies. So I try to help streamline people and navigate through that. Once you get in business for a couple of years, we can go to what's called the voluntary market. I can get you a policy once we meet those guidelines that'll cover all states, but there are a couple of monopolistic states. I think there's 4 that you will have to go to that state directly. I can't even sell you that policy. Everybody goes to the state to purchase coverage in those 4 states, but Ohio being one of them. That's sort of the long and short of it, and why I try to help navigate through this insurance maze And again, to everybody, no matter who you use, I just want to make sure you go into this knowing exactly what you're getting or knowing exactly what you're asking for. And that'll actually help you in your business plan as well. So that's why I wanted to get involved with Dee, try to help with some Q&A up front, just as you guys are initially sort of doing your business planning or business modeling. So that's my spiel at the first. So Dee, I don't know if anybody's got any questions. I'm sure there are a couple at least. So we can kind of tackle those if you want to.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, thanks so much for that, because those are questions that we get all the time. I do want to ask a question that, and then I'll go into one of the questions that was texted to me, and,
Okay.
and everybody else can go on with their questions. But our healthcare staffingpreneurs. So Russ, you know, over the last couple of years, we've gone from like 5% of healthcare in our community to like 80%, right? It is just expanded, I would say, over the last 4 or 5 years, pre-COVID even, right?
Right.
And so now, pre-COVID, it was more, I feel like it was much easier to get healthcare staffingpreneurs like workers' comp and you know, insurance and funding and different things like that. And then as COVID happened, it just didn't get better. And then now I feel like it's a lot more challenging. And the question that we get all the time, or people come into the community and say all the time, in the healthcare space in particular, is everybody is denying me for insurance. I'm having a hard time getting insurance. What we have found that has worked so far is that I have been telling the staffingpreneurs to, and you can tell me if I've been telling it wrong, but to get insurance in states that are state funded, right? And so if it's where you can go directly to the state's person and get that funding and start with that policy, and then stay in that particular state until you get to a certain point where you need to add another one on. States like California and Texas, where the biggest shortage is happening, right? And where there is, you know, they're large, you know, and there's a lot of people. That has been one of the biggest challenges we've been experiencing, but that's how we've been able to get some of the healthcare staffingpreneurs funded. Like, what are your thoughts about that?
So that was the purpose of this list when I just got started. So the list that I read off are the combinable. So those states play well with each other, but nobody else. States like California and Texas really don't play well with each other or others. They're just going to write coverage for just that state. So they have their own RAN, how I was explaining NCCI, they have their own RAN state funds. So South Carolina has SCIF, and then Texas is ran through Texas Mutual. Texas will actually add other states, but it has to be a very small percentage of the Texas payroll or the Texas premium. So just so you know on Texas, but like work comp not being the most difficult, work comp we can get coverage for. We just have to jump through a lot of hoops. California, Florida, and New York being the toughest ones to get coverage for, and those are standalone states. The liability has been the toughest because we've got people, number one, the whole medical community didn't know how to provide care for COVID. All right. So I think we're still arguing, you know, what's right, what's wrong. So I think there was a lot of concern about providing care inadequately or inappropriately to someone and then having a lawsuit back against the provider. So the errors and omissions coverage was the biggest concern for the insurance community. We partnered with a program, Aon, that's it's all 50 states. It's based off nurses and how many that you have. The only problem with this, and I actually dealt with another staffingpreneur with this, I said, look, this is going to get you started. This is the easiest and cheapest way to get started. As you grow and as you start providing labor to let's say bigger hospitals or bigger institutions, they may require a higher limit of coverage than this program is designed to provide. So then we've got to go back to the market and then get something else, either through Lloyd's of London or Everest or Markel, a couple of those other programs that are designed to do this. Philadelphia plays in the game. A lot of them just don't do new ventures. So we're trying to get people up and running with what they can get. And then once they reach year 2 or 3, things become a lot more easy. We've got a funnel that's like this that goes like this now. So we've got all these other opportunities. Temp staffing is a hard industry to service just because you're already limited to the amount of insurance companies that want to play in that space. If you're a carpenter, I've got probably 50 insurance companies that'll write that tomorrow. But when you're dealing in temp staffing, you only have X amount of insurance companies, let's say 8, that'll do business with you. And then you go through the underwriting decision tree and you be a new venture, medical staffing, all of these things. Now you've disqualified the underwriting guidelines for these other opportunities. So you kind of got to go with the horse that's out there that'll let you get in the game. Once you get the certificate, once you start sending that out and kind of figure out where you're even going or what's working as a recruiting model, then we can go back to the drawing board. I can replace a policy midterm. You just need to make sure there's not a minimum earned premium on those policies, no matter who you get it from. So even staffingpreneurs that have been with you for a while that we didn't connect first, we can still look at it if they're having trouble with their existing policy not meeting any kind of requirements or something like that. You can always revamp your insurance program.
Okay, perfect. So just really quickly before I respond to that and dive into the next question, if you're watching here on YouTube, welcome. We have Russ Rymer here and of Madison Insurance Group, and he's talking to us about obtaining staffing, obtaining insurance for your niche recruitment and staffing business. And this is a part of our weekly Q&A call. Our weekly Q&A call comes with our setup class. I am very passionate about people not starting this business on their own. It's resources like this, it's experiences like this that you get when you become a member of Staffingpreneurs Academy, and you have training and you have coaching and you're dealing with real industry experts that can help you make the right decisions about how to move in your business, especially when you're talking about compliance, especially when you're talking about just being on point with your business, because you are representing not just yourself, but the staffing industry as a whole, right? So I encourage you to go to the website, staffingpreneursacademy.com. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a chat box. You can talk to one of our representatives. We would love to be able to talk to you a little bit more about what you're doing with your niche recruitment and staffing business and how we can support you. Okay, now, with that being said, Russ, everything you said sounds amazing. And so I've got to ask a couple of questions. I took notes, okay?
Sure.
So when staffingpreneurs, I'm talking about healthcare again, all right, specifically, okay. But maybe this isn't just specifically for healthcare. But when my healthcare staffingpreneurs get contracts, a lot of times they start off with a VMS, right? And it has so many different jobs in all of these different locations. They need workers' comp in more than one place. So based on what you were just saying, would they only have to focus on one location of that VMS, or would they be able to buy a number of different policies from different states to cover locations? Like, how would that work for them?
So there's no limit. We can set up as many of these as you want to. Okay. I just want people to know up front the states that are combinable within CCI. So it'd be easy to actually, let's say your home state was North Carolina and you signed on with a VMS, then you had an opportunity in Georgia. Well, those are combinable states. Those are easy to add. We can already combine those either upfront, or you can combine them by endorsement. So that's another thing I want to hit on. So when we set up a policy, you can endorse that policy and make changes to it within those underwriting guidelines. So if you're working in, like I say, North Carolina is your home state, I always recommend people setting up work comp policies for the home state of their business first, and then you pivot out from that. So we can add any of those states that I listed off on the combinable list. If you send us a new client form and it's for a state that's not on that combinable list, doesn't mean we can't provide coverage for it, or I can't give you a rate for it. I just want people to know up front what they're getting into. Hey, we can go ahead and apply to Texas. It's just going to be Texas Mutual. Now you're going to have two different policies. And some people, for the right size opportunity, it makes sense. Now, for one nurse, I wouldn't write a new policy for that. So if the opportunity presents itself, the answer is always yes. We've just got to figure out how we can solve that problem. And then once you get into the voluntary market, you can clean up the multiple policy situation and then provide one policy that has all the states on there. We're just, again, sort of working with Band-Aids to try to make sure we meet whatever your requirements are up front until you get to that 3-year and then minimum premium requirement that a lot of insurance companies have. I hope that kind of clears that up. But there's not an opportunity that I want people to turn down because of insurance, but I do want them to know as starting out what's easier to make happen, and then also what's going to take a little bit of underwriting time. I don't want people to say yes to something and get frustrated because underwriting's delaying our application. Though that's completely out of my hands. We just have to jump through all their hoops.
I have so many questions. I had another question, but then you talked about underwriting. And so it's like, wait, so underwriting feels like a ghost to me, just so you know.
It is.
Because not just with you and from the insurance space, but when I'm supporting my staffingpreneurs and we're working with funding companies, they also say things like, underwriting is asking this question, or underwriting, and I'm like, who the heck is underwriting? Like, who are these people? So a question that I do have is like, how can we understand underwriting a little bit better and better position ourselves to look good to underwriting, whoever these underwriting people are?
So there are a couple of different tactics when dealing with underwriters. As I was explaining earlier, with commercial insurance, we don't provide coverage on it's not a template where I can log in online and provide that. We have to fill out applications and send it in. There are two different schools of thought. You can fill out the application and let them ask the questions that they're needing answers to, or you can try to answer that. Sometimes that can lead us to a black hole, in my experience, if we try to overshare, because we just had one that was talking about doing business in the oil and gas industry. I know this insurance company will provide coverage for it. They're not currently staffing for it, but now I got all these underwriters asking about the oil and gas industry and what type of work it is and all this kind of stuff. Well, she doesn't even know yet. She's a new venture. So that was, in my opinion, that's a classic overshare. Whereas I would just say this is a new venture staffing company that doesn't have any clients. That's completely accurate. We're going to target this and this and this industry, but we don't know yet. So whenever people fill out the application, I also get a lot of people that have the entrepreneur hat on, like I discussed, and they're putting all this stuff and I'll have this and this. Well, then they end up with a $30,000 liability quote based on all the stuff that they want to do, but they don't have the revenue being generated to even support that kind of an insurance premium, right? I would love to write a $30,000 insurance policy, but if I do it and you can't afford the bill, we didn't do each other any favors. And then, so I really want to help people grow organically and we'll write a base policy really for everything. And then how our agency handles it, we'll have a new client form. So and I can share that with you too, Dee, and you can pass it out to everybody, but it's a new client form that they'll fill out. And I want people to send that to us whenever they're doing a bid for a job, so I can let them know the expenses associated with that potential new client, because you may need a new policy. You may need a new class code that I can give you a new rate for. And that's where we start understanding what our burden is, because we know taxes, right? FICA, FUTA, and SUTA taxes. But then you're going to also need to know what my insurance burden is, what the work comp rate per 100 is, and all of that. So you understand your full expense load, so you can even price new business. And I try to help people do that up front. I know sometimes the speed of business moves faster than that. But I want people to ask, call me, text me. I can at least give you a general answer. It's going to be this, and I can look up, like right now I've got it pulled up. I can pull up any class code and a base rate for that class code. And so you can understand at least what the work comp burden piece of it is. So, I'll try to get people involved as quickly as I can up front. And then we build out what their insurance profile looks like. And then at renewal, we've got more of a picture, and then we can actually go to a better insurance company, potentially pay less, because now we understand what that risk profile looks like.
So Russ, are you saying that that since it's a new venture, that they maybe shouldn't be so specific about the type of niche that they're supporting until that act to get the insurance until they
the niche is helpful. The niche is helpful, but expanding on multiple niches maybe is where I would try to be as laser focused as I could be, at least starting, and then we can pivot from that. But we don't want to get too out here, because what we ran into, medical liability doesn't play well with somebody that's doing oil and gas, stuff, or somebody that's doing another specific industry. Now you're going to end up with two different policies. So that's where I think understanding up front where maybe we want to tailor this to exactly what you need to get started, what's going to get you up and running. So you're generating revenue. Now that's paying for this. And then we can expand to maybe another policy or endorse that policy for a different industry.
Okay. And I know my students have questions, but I have things that people have been asking me, and
no, that's,
people are texting me. Some people are listening in, so they're texting me. I've got messages in the inbox that are private. So I want to get through a lot of these.
Yeah.
So, so you might have already asked this, but it's the way the question is being asked to me. I have to ask it again in a different way.
Sure.
Okay? So when they get that paperwork and they're supposed to fill everything out for the insurance policy, they always come back and ask me, how many people should I say that I have working, right? And should I say I will have 100 people working, and then at the end of the year, if I only had 0, should I say I have 0 people working, and then if I have 100, will I be penalized? So let's
think about it this way. Let's think about it this way. So to understand how to answer that question, you need to know what the potential ramifications of answering that incorrectly are. With liability, it's not. Basically, you just want to make sure you have that industry in there. So you're covering, let's say, nurses at hospitals. If you put 1, then you're good. That policy is not auditable. The liability and professional is not an auditable policy. So whatever you put, whatever we get coverage based on, that is what it is. It's a snapshot in time of that time you filled out the application. Work comp, however, is the one that's auditable, and it's based on exposure that you have in each class code. So you have state, the class code, and then the payroll at the end of the policy term. So let's say we wrote the policy based on 10,000 in payroll, but you ended up having $1 million. You just got to pay the difference, $990,000 of payroll. We'll put those in the correct categories in the audit, and then you'll pay the premium based on that. So there are 2 different policies and 2 different ways those are looked at. But I try to tell people, look, the snapshot in time theory is the easiest way to do it, because you don't have these temps placed. You're going to want to say, this is my projection. I'm going to target nurse staffing in hospitals right now, or CNAs in hospitals. So fill that out based on those questions, put a potential 1 temp in each category, because you don't have any, you're still projecting more. And we just want to make sure those categories are filled in so you have the correct coverage. But if you end up by the end of the policy having 10 in that category, we already have it covered and it's not auditable. So the next liability is retroactive looking. So when we fill out the renewal, you will base it on what you had for the prior 12 months. Okay. So you're not, when we're filling it, that's why new ventures are so difficult. But when we're filling out the application now, there's nothing, right? So when we've got to project something, people leave it blank. And I'm like, well, you've got to have something in there so the underwriter can figure out what industry you're going to serve. So that's why I tell people, put maybe one or two, whatever is the most realistic categories you're going to be working in immediately. And that's the best we can do. It's really like a dartboard. Until you get that first year underneath you, you don't know what you're going to actually service. I have people start out in medical staffing, end up in industrial too. So, I mean, it's like, what sells, I'm not going to tell people no, neither should you. So, I mean, we've just got to figure this out as it goes on. So the ongoing service piece is filling out that new client form, sending it to us. And then I can tell you, hey, all right, you've already got coverage for this. Let's just add it to the work comp. Here's what the work comp rate. Let me know if you want me to endorse the policy, if you actually sign the customer. So when they sign the customer, email me back, Russ, add it to the policy. Here's how much payroll I'm projecting for this contract. I'll endorse it, move on to the next one. But at least you've got revenue now coming in to support that insurance projection.
Okay, that's awesome. So I have three more questions, and then they can take the floor. You mentioned, let me see how much time I have. Okay, you mentioned no minimum on premiums. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You said no minimum on premiums. What does that mean?
So there are minimum premiums, but there's when we set something up, like there's a work comp minimum premium to set the policy up. And then typically on a liability, there is as well. I don't know where I said there's no minimum premiums, but typically we don't meet the minimum premium for the voluntary market until we're in business for 3 years or in business for 2 years. And then we've generated enough payroll. So we're not meeting that minimum premium for the voluntary market. So then we have to make sure we meet that criteria to get into the upper echelon where we're out of the assigned marketplace.
Okay, maybe I misheard. I just took notes. Okay.
Sure.
Direct hire. If someone is starting a direct hire staffing agency or an executive search staffing agency where they are not running payroll, what type of insurance do they need?
Here's what I tell people for direct hire, just a recruiting firm. So we will need still general and professional liability. That's a whole different model because you're just making the applicant as a referral. So if you don't want to refer the person that's not qualified, then that can still come back on you. So you'll still need general and professional liability. It's a lot lower because there's not an ongoing exposure. Once you make that referral and they hire that person, you're pretty much off the risk. That's no longer your third party liability. Then for work comp, I just tell people, let's set up a ghost policy for your home state. So you at least have a backstop that shows as long as that person may still be perceived as an employee by the state, you still want that backstop of a ghost policy. Now there won't be any payroll. You don't run payroll, but it'll still cover that potential claim if they are injured in your office. Or there's always different states have different laws. California's being the most lenient for employee, the definition of who's an employee. So there may still be a potential liability there. So I would always set up a ghost policy with no payroll, and it would be just the minimum premium for that state. Typically, for just clerical only, it's around $1,000. So you would pay $1,000 for work comp. You would pay the base premium for a recruitment firm for general and professional liability, but there's not any ongoing exposure, or it's not based off payroll either. It's just a set policy.
Stephanie says, so I might have missed it. I know you can't do exact amount, but what are we looking for an upfront cost or when it is paid? And right now we're only talking about direct hire.
Sure. So typically, and it varies by state. That's where it always gets difficult for anybody to project. But typically we'll do that as an 8810, which is the clerical class code for direct hire. It would be around $1,000. Some states will be a little bit less than that. Some states may be $1,200, but that's going to be your work comp ghost policy premium that you can average in about every single state. On the liability piece of it, it's fairly cheap. You could get it. I haven't rated one in a while, and that always moves around. But with Hiscox or one of those people that do direct hire firms, it's around $1,500. So loosely, if I were doing a direct hire firm, I would project $2,500 to $3,000 to get set up for all the insurance piece of it. Because again, there's not going to be ongoing payroll you have to worry about because you're just doing direct hires. Those are not your employees. It's just sort of filling that stopgap, like I was explaining, before they get hired and potentially maybe having a claim. And a lot of people want to see that certificate as well.
For sure. Okay, so tell me, if I am starting a commercial temp staffing business or a professional solutions staffing business where I'm placing contractors, not healthcare,
Right.
just general non-healthcare standard, and I'm also doing direct hire, what type of insurance do I need?
So the standard policy that covers those temps will cover direct hire. That's already kind of labeled in there because a lot of temp firms also will do direct placement, or they'll do direct placement, they'll do 90-day sort of a probationary period, and then they'll hire them on, or they'll do just temporary placements. So that policy is tailored to handle all three of those categories. So you just fill out the application with projections based on what you would have in each one of those categories.
Okay. And so they would need general liability. Can you just list them out exactly what they'll need?
I'm sorry. Yeah. So general and professional liability. Here's how we always start every single staffing firm out, be it direct recruiting, medical, industrial, construction, any of them. You're going to always need general and professional liability. And then you'll need the work comp and I always set it up for $1 million liability limits on the work comp. So you'll have a 1 million, 2 million, 1 million per occurrence, 2 million aggregate on general liability, and then a 1 million per occurrence, 2 million aggregate on professional. And then you'll have your work comp employer liability limits that'll be 1 million, million, and 1 million across the board. So your low water mark on any claims, $1 million. And how that works on work comp is you've got employer liability limits, but the actual work comp piece of it is state statutory. So whatever that state rating is for a broken finger, they're going to get that. So it can potentially be over $1 million is what I want people to know.
Interesting. Okay. I'm recording, Russ.
So that way people can go back and play it again.
So if I am starting a healthcare staffing business where I am doing per diem, or I am doing travel nursing, I might even be doing locums, like what type of healthcare insurance, what type of insurance do I need to be in compliance to run my niche recruitment healthcare staffing business?
So again, we want to build out the base policy of general and professional liability and work comp with a more specific or professional industry. You are going to see requests for higher limits. So that limit could be required of a 2 million per occurrence and a 4 million aggregate. Or what we can also do is set up the 1 million, 2 million policy and just put an umbrella policy in place. So that goes over both the work comp, general, and professional liability as well. There's two different ways to accomplish that. I like the umbrella method better because you may have a requirement of an umbrella down the road anyway, and it's usually cheaper to do additional limits with an umbrella limit than it is to add to the other. So because we have people that are required 5, 6, 7, 8, even $10 million limits. Now there's the only way to satisfy that's to do an umbrella. So you don't want to start over. Anytime anybody ever asks for additional limits, you always want to ask for an umbrella versus increasing liability limits on the general and professional liability.
Awesome. Elle on YouTube said, good question. Thanks, Elle. Sade said, we decided to work with a back office and they have insurance to cover the contract workers, and would professional liability insurance be the only thing needed to cover the business? Should I repeat that again? Because I didn't have glasses on.
Nope.
Okay.
No, I got it. You did good.
Okay,
so
good.
I would do, if that were me, and that's the best way I can always answer these questions. If it were me, knowing what I know, I would still get a general and professional liability policy, just because you don't ever know what your company is going to be liable for. So when it comes to general and professional liability and even work comp, we're covering potential lawsuits. Okay. So I was in a work or a claim where somebody was building a house. they use Sherwin-Williams paint. Sherwin-Williams even got drug into the lawsuit. So when they name your company, you want to make sure and have your own liability policy, professional and general, to be able to cover any potential lawsuit that may come across. So if it's bodily injury or if it's property damage, that's going to be general liability. But there's also the loophole of professional liability that will cover professional judgments or recommendations by your company. So if you just have professional, that's only covering your judgment or professional recommendations. It's not going to cover that property damage or bodily injury that may come from that claim. So you really want to make sure and cover both of those.
I want to go back to, Sade said, thank you. I want to go back to a question that Stephanie asked earlier. You answered it specific to direct hire, but I want to go back and ask it to the other three markets, because that's really where our market space is. So is it the same amount of money roughly, or of an upfront cost to start a insurance policy with contract staffing as it is for direct hire only, or is it a difference? And
no,
then
because
hold on, my second question is regular contract staffing, the upfront cost going to be different than if it's a healthcare staffing agency? Would they have a different upfront cost than someone who's just doing general staffing and it's not healthcare at all?
So we've got contract staffing versus direct staffing versus healthcare, and all three of those are their own different animals. So that's what I was saying. A lot of the healthcare policies that we're setting up aren't really set up to also cover industrial. They will cover direct hire typically, but if we set it up for like contractors or industrial staffing, it typically won't cover the healthcare piece of it, but will still also cover direct hire. So there are vastly different minimum premiums based on which sectors of those industries you're wanting to get into. If it's just general labor, warehouse staff, that kind of stuff, for the contract labor, for light industrial, that's going to be more generic. You're going to have a lower minimum premium. But if you're getting into more specific type of employees, let's say like IT or something where there's more of a professional piece to it, that minimum premium starts to go up, because that's where those categories mean the most. Because when we're putting down our projections on these categories, underwriters are looking at that and they're determining the potential liability for that company based on those projections.
I got so many questions about that.
I answered that like a politician, but I'm telling you, there's no right answer or no wrong answer, because it's all based off the application and what is the potential risk.
Mm-hmm. So if what niche markets do you find to be the easiest or the most cost effective to get workers or to get insurance? And then which ones do you feel like are the most challenging? Before you answer that, I'm going to tell you what comes into my community all the time. So light industrial is the least. Administrative, clerical, we get some. Project management, definitely more project product management, program management. Also, we get teachers, lots of teachers, sales, veterans. I'm doing the stuff that's not all healthcare just yet. Cybersecurity is huge. Software developers, right? And then we go into our next phase, which is CNAs, LPNs, RNs, NPs, case managers, physical therapists, occupational therapists, and then DONs, nurse administrators. So they're literally going like that. And so people are always asking me, what are the hottest niches? Well, I can tell you it's hot. But then when you start talking about it from an insurance perspective, I don't know what's hot. So do you know what's hot?
I mean, well, and here's what everybody needs to understand is everybody's got to insure it. Everybody's jumping through these same hoops. Don't feel like it's just you. If somebody's got it easy, they're not covered. They're not covered correctly. So if you want to cover your business correctly, if you want to jump through the hoops from underwriting, it's part of the game. But like when you start dealing in more specific, you got to think about it, put an underwriter's hat on, and your job is to protect the insurance company from potential loss. And so they're going to rate like how you were talking about software. Let's take that one for instance. And I hope you didn't expect me to remember all of those because there's no way I can. But so like IT, let's just start with IT. So someone that's working a help desk that's let's say I emailed help desk and I've got trouble just logging in my email. Well, the risk on that's virtually none. But an IT person that's doing software development, that's taking payments offline, that maybe didn't do this secure enough, and that company gets hacked and they find out, oh, this person didn't. Now, if there's a big enough loss, everybody's getting sued. So that's what the underwriter is going to look at, is what is my potential back end liability on that employee, more from a professional judgment. Now, when we look at construction employees or even industrial, those people are more likely to have a general liability claim. Those are going to be more bodily injury and property damage. They drive a forklift into the side of the building, or they injure someone with that forklift, or they, hit someone with a board they're walking around a job site with. Those are general liability type claims. So that's going to be more underwritten on the general liability side, but have a lower premium on professional. If you're doing direct hire, the general liability side is going to be next to nothing, but the professional liability is going to be a little bit higher premium.
What about
so
truck
it's
drivers?
all based on, I'm sorry, drivers?
Truck drivers.
Truck drivers. So on truck drivers, that's a unique situation because it's one of those deals where you have the auto liability for that automobile that's already in place for that. Let's say it's an 18-wheeler. They've got to cover that, and it's got auto liability that's typically going to be primary, but it's still going to be a general liability risk assessment from our underwriter for the staffing company, because you're talking about bodily injury and property damage. You're not talking about a professional judgment or anything like that that's still going to carry on from the temp to a third party. So that's going to be, it's something that, yes, we can cover. Though honestly, I never thought I'd say this. Truck drivers are easy to get covered than medical staffing right now. I can get those covered a lot easier. Contractors and light industrial, those are industries that are serviced. But again, where you're talking about where's the demand, the profit margin's less, you're paying those people less per hour. So is there a labor pool that's out there? That's why I want to get involved with you guys up front, so we can talk through all this, so we can understand, like, okay, that's easier to get insurance on, but now I've got an order for 50 people for industrial staffing, but I can't even find people that want to do that job.
Okay, so keep going. Okay, so what about nurses and
nurses, well, now you've got a higher wage person. Typically there's a major demand for this. Hospitals are all short staffed, especially after COVID. A lot of people went into retirement that were already on that edge. So I think it's a very underserved community. Once we get over the initial hurdle of liability underwriting, as you grow and get into the new business, I saw a question actually pop up too, and I'll answer this, about when you no longer considered new ventures or new to the insurance business. Typically that is 3 years. So if you can make it past 3 years in business, now we have what they call insurance experience. We don't have insurance for commercial underwriting is not based on a credit score or anything like that. They score it based off of insurance history. That is sort of like your insurance credit score. So the more years you can show that you've been in business and don't have any claims, then that helps you move over this underwriting threshold on year 4 to get into more of a voluntary market, or more of one of these insurance companies that can do medical and industrial staffing all together on one policy. I'm not saying you can't get it done year 2, but usually the line is 3 years.
And then what about cannabis? That's the last one.
Cannabis, that's a growing industry. We get a lot of it. And that's easy because, again, the liability there, they're not creating the product. They're more either harvesting it, or they're packaging it, or they're working in a retail shop. So the liability there is still going to be on the general liability side, not as much on the professional, because it's not that person's not making a third party recommendation on that would hurt somebody. It would be more of like, I hurt somebody with the forklift as I was moving these bales or something like that. So it's more general liability heavy than it is professional.
Yeah, and also, I think that also would depend on the level of the cannabis industry. I have a young lady who's staffing in the cannabis space, and she's only staffing like HR managers, HR directors, recruiters.
Yeah, so that's a professional, and it just hit me too. Like if you're one of those people in the lab that's actually creating the new strains or something like, if you're creating a product, now that's more professional piece of it as far as the temp side of it goes. So you're really now moving the needle more towards professional concerns than liability, but you still can potentially hurt someone if you make that mixture incorrect. You can make someone sick, or you can damage property if you blew up the lab. So you just have to think, is this property damage, or can I injure someone versus my person being somewhere where they made an incorrect recommendation and that's hurting someone, or they created a product that I said they were a professional for that they didn't know what they were doing. They weren't qualified enough. So it's more people who need a degree, engineers. You think about pharmacists, medical staff, scientists, any of those architects, any of those engineers that are underserved, and even that's on the IT space. Are they qualified to be able to do that position?
Cool. Last question. Is there a different type of insurance that you need to have if you're a staffing agency that is also offering technology as a form of staffing? A lot of staffingpreneurs are now incorporating technology into their staffing model. And and then also if they are selling like courses or a physical product, is there a different type of insurance that they need in addition to
so if you're selling a physical product, that's still more of like the general liability piece of it, like property damage or bodily injury. If you're selling the tech with staffing services, I would actually include a cyber liability policy, just because the potential and ransomware or cyber crime is the #1 crime in the United States right now. It's grown every year, almost double. And I had something on my desktop. I actually cleaned it up just the other day and deleted it. But the FBI said it is the #1 crime, and they expect it to grow exponentially over the next couple of years as we become more and more online presence. We do business online. We send banking information online. I had a title company that they actually had a ransomware attack. Because everything's so online, they still couldn't close on that home. They had moving trucks in a driveway. They couldn't do a closing because everything was held up. Their whole system was down. They couldn't process the deeds. So they lost millions of dollars in transactions because they were held up for ransomware, that one of their employees clicked on the wrong email and it locked their whole system up. So be it ransomware, be it somebody that takes over that system from a back door. If you're building that software, you're going to want cyber liability coverage on really any staffing company as you start scaling and growing. That's something we don't talk nearly enough about, is covering cyber insurance or cyber liability, because let's think about it this way. You've got 100 temps that are out there on the job. Somebody in your office clicks on the email, you can't process those ACH payments. They don't get paid that week. And what does that do to your reputation? So cyber liability also covers the reputation repair. It'll cover the amount of time that your business is down, business income. It's a very needed liability policy for any business that's up and running and actually has revenue that's being generated.
I was going to say that I think that should be a mandatory. And for me, and I'm only saying that because we're dealing with that applicant tracking system, and we've got data, and a lot of us are outsourcing to India, to to the Philippines or where have you. People are touching data. And like, I think that it's super, that should be like a mandatory, but that's just me personally, but if the moment you flip that ATS on, like you're all, and you start getting candidates in there, especially when you start credentialing them and getting their background and licensure, their licenses, you know, different things like that, their background, the HIPAA information for my honey. So I think that was a great that's a great one. And I think that should definitely be mandatory, but you go ahead, Russ.
No, if people want to quote on that, it's all based on how many years you've been in business and your total business revenue, because it will cover whatever revenue we put on there. It will cover up to that amount in a claim. So let's say
they would have to wait a year if they're brand new.
That's why I don't recommend it for new ventures, because you don't have enough information that's being generated online. You're trying to just get over that hump of placing that first person. So to provide, cyber liability on that, it's not really, what are we really covering? There's, but we still want people to get paid. So if it's something that's going to keep you up at night, just give me the years in business and the total estimated annual revenue for your business. I can get you a quote. It's just, you've got to weigh those dollars. With any insurance, I'll preface this, with any insurance, you are just offsetting your risk of that potential claim to an insurance company. It's got to be worth it to you to be able to pay the premium to offset that risk. So people come to me too, and they say, I want to be insured for everything. That doesn't exist. There's literally gaps in every policy. So, we can't sit and dream up, or even if we did, you'd go broke paying for the potential premium too. So we cover adequate risk for adequate premium. And so you can make money and generate revenue. We don't want to be at a standstill, scared to death. I don't sell based on fear. We sell based on reality. And that's why I want to consult with people and say, what are your potential exposures? And let me tell you how we can, satisfy those. So again, you're not worried. Let's say somebody hacks you, and with those cyber liability policies, they will provide a service that will come in there, clean your software, or pay the ransom. Believe it or not, they're attorney firms based in New York that already have a direct line of connection with these cyber, basically warfare criminals that are in Russia, China, and India, and wherever, and they'll pay the ransom. And so it's real. And sometimes that is an easier way from the insurance company's perspective to get that release, so these people can have access to their system. The other way is to make sure your system's backed up and not online every single day, and you back it up to a hard drive and you unplug it. That's the other risk management piece of it, is that you can always retro back to the system that was saved. You may lose that day of data, but it won't completely lock you down. So there are some risk management pieces that come along with those policies that you can connect with the firms that they have, and they'll help you. And it behooves everyone to try to prevent that claim from even happening. And that's part of the cyber liability policies.
One final question. So before I finish up with our final question and Russ tells us how we can get in contact with them, I want to let you know, for everyone that is streaming in live from YouTube, or, I really, really, really want you to take the time to connect with us here at Staffingpreneurs Academy. I don't want you to set your niche recruitment and staffing business up on your own. I want you to get the support that you need and the tools and the resources to set your business up right the first time, to get it compliant. If you're already up and running and you don't have insurance, then this is one of the reasons why you want to become a part of this community right now. So do me a favor, go to staffingpreneursacademy.com. In the bottom right-hand corner, you will see the chat bot. You can converse there, and one of our enrollment specialists will talk to you and get an understanding about your business goals, where you are, and then how we can support you. Now, Russ, if you had one final thing that you could say to staffingpreneurs today that you feel like would really help them in this insurance type of journey, what would that be? And then you can close us out on how to contact you.
So first and foremost, while you're setting your business plan up, get in contact with an agent and get these quotes as soon as possible. You do not want to have a potential customer out there and then waiting on underwriting to provide a quote. So that's the first and foremost. Let's have a consultation first, find out what your needs are, be it that you deal with me or whatever insurance agent you deal with. I want you to go into this informed. I want you to have the right coverage, but also want you to have coverage when you need it, because you don't want to be shuffling around and trying to fill this and make sure you have funding in place. And so if the insurance is already quoted, it's in your inbox, it's not going to harm anybody for it just sit there. So get on that as soon as you possibly can. So it's also part of your budget as well. When you're talking to potential clients, you'll know what your potential burden is for those clients. So there's just, I don't like surprises. I don't think people can plan for that. So knowing as much as you can up front and starting the insurance consultation. So again, you can even plan for what states you're in. So sooner than later is the biggest advice I can give.
How can we get in contact with you? I'm going to put your contact information in the description below, but how can we get in contact with you?
Wonderful. So I've got a website. It's actually about to be revamped because some of the applications and stuff on there are old, but you can look at those. The new client form is on there. My website is staffingwc.com, and you can call me anytime. If I've gotten like 6 texts since we've been on this Zoom meeting. But text me, please, and just let me know, hey, I'm a referral from Staffingpreneurs. My cell phone number is 865-963-1224. I do get busy. My intention is to get back with everybody before the end of that day. But if I don't, please follow back up with me. I may have just accidentally missed you. You can also email me. My name is Russ, R-U-S-S, .Rymer, R-Y-M-E-R, at miginsgroup.com. You can email me as well, but let's start the insurance conversation first as soon as possible. Again, you don't have to purchase with me, but I do want you to purchase what you actually need.
Awesome. And like I said, I'll put Russ's information in the description below in YouTube, and I'll make sure that it is also in your group for my Staffingpreneurs. It'll be in Reskillify. I'll also put the information for Staffingpreneurs Academy in the description link below for YouTube. Russ, we really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. An hour and 10 minutes. We really, really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to inform us and give us the information that we need. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
No problem. Great questions.
11 a.m. Oh, wait, was it like 2 p.m. Eastern is when we're meeting for our Run It class. 2 p.m. Eastern. If you're in the Run It class, we meet then. I look forward to seeing you all. Thanks again, Russ. Thanks, Staffingpreneurs. I'll see y'all next Monday for the setup class. Y'all have a phenomenal freaking day and stay fired up.